The University of Washington Bachelor of Science in Real Estate provides a comprehensive learning experience for students seeking a career in real estate. Students develop strong quantitative skills in financial modeling, market analysis, GIS, and more, while engaging in impactful experiential learning opportunities outside the classroom to build stellar leadership, communication, and interpersonal skills. The three BSRE alumni featured in the following panel represent three distinct professional pathways in the field of real estate that are possible through the completion of the BSRE degree from the University of Washington.
My name is Hanson. I graduated from the Runstad department in the BSRE program last spring 2024. Currently, I am with Bank of America. I am an analyst within their corporate investment banking credit division. And my verticals are tech, media, telecom, and gaming. So I end up going a different career path in finance. And what I do on a day-to-day basis is I have a portfolio of about 20 companies. They range from high yield to investment grade. So the weaker credits that could be close to default, and then the stronger names that banks are more likely to lend to. And a lot of the companies I work with are very well known. They're companies that I use products with every single day. And whenever a deal or transaction comes in, my job is to do the due diligence, making sure that their financial performance is up to plan, and making sure that their business model, whatever they're doing, is within our bank's risk tolerance.
Hello everyone, my name is Jill Bryan. I'm graduating with a BSRE from Runstad this year. I also have a minor in business, but in the fall I will be returning to my last internship with Microsoft on their land acquisition team, working as a portfolio manager. So kind of what that means is I support the team to acquire land to build data centers for the company. And that kind of involves attending a lot of meetings with external shareholders, as well as looking at the due diligence side of real estate. So making sure that that land has exactly what Microsoft needs for their data center development and kind of clearing the way for a successful close.
Hi everyone, my name is Hunter Evans. I am a licensed managing real estate broker at John L. Scott out of the Bellevue Issaquah office. I've been involved professionally in real estate for the last 3.5 years, but I have been around it my entire life. My mom's been a broker for over 35 years, so I've learned a lot just through osmosis from her professionally. And then when I was younger, I'd put the signs out at the open houses, I'd talk to clients, and just naturally kind of progressed. And something I decided in high school during COVID was to actually get my real estate license to see if I would like it. And then throughout college, I worked part-time as a broker. I'm now full-time. A lot of what that entails is I work with both buyers and sellers alike and relocation clients. So every day and week looks very different. I'm usually out in the field or working from my car, showing homes, negotiating contracts on behalf of buyers or sellers, and then just day-to-day figuring out people's needs. They're always different, and you wear a lot of hats as a real estate broker. I constantly get asked tons of different questions and advocating for clients. So if you don't know the information, you need to find it out fast. But I love commission-based sales. I know it scares a lot of people, but I think one of the best parts about it is very rewarding and fulfilling, and I love being a part of people's home buying journey and experience. I think it's a really special thing to have a career in. So actually grew up going inside of the company office I work at, so it was really interesting. I've seen a decent amount of turnover, but also I felt really valued interviewing at that company versus other brokerages. And I think one of the most important things post-grad is feeling like you're comfortable in the work environment you're in and you feel supported by the people around you. So I really felt that way at John L. Scott, and really I felt like I could advocate for myself and that people would help me out, especially as a younger broker. So that is ultimately why I chose John L. Scott. I do love the career choice to just being a real estate broker in general, because I think you have a lot of freedom that comes with that. The corporate 9-to-5 life was something that I did not want, so I felt like getting to be my own independent contractor was very important to me, so I could set my own schedule. And basically I pay to be at John L. Scott, which is kind of how it works. So I'm not technically considered an employee, so I just go about things the best way I see, and then have some great mentors too that help me out. That's been imperative. But I definitely feel very valued at the company and supported.
I'll have to plug the department. I found my internship where I am now going to be working full time through the Runstad Career Fair. I found Microsoft's table kind of by chance. I had no clue that Microsoft had a real estate arm. There's a couple arms for real estate within the company, but this one for their data centers is its own kind of animal. And so I just really had a great conversation with them. I wasn't really at first trying to get an internship or anything like that, but just trying to understand, what does your day look like? What are you doing? What are your challenges? And that just was really interesting to me. So then when I interned, I was just so excited because Microsoft has such a wonderful community, and the employees really do. It's kind of like a family in my experience, where they just all come together and support each other, and there's always a challenge every day. And I think that was what was so exciting to me, is there's always a challenge and every day has something new. But I think I felt really supported, and there's a lot of really smart people that I could learn from. So that's kind of what brought me back, and I'm just grateful to the department for supporting us as students and really setting us up to do well in the real world.
Yeah, so my first interaction with the bank is actually, I bank with Bank of America, so I've been with them since I was a kid. And I've always been very into personal finance. I love looking at different kinds of investments, building my portfolio. I'm really into credit cards, so if you want to talk about credit cards, I can talk about that. And then, when I was in school, how I came about the internship I was originally in was through Handshake. So just like Jill said, the career fairs are really great, but also Handshake is great as well. So you could definitely find opportunities there. And then, I did a 10-week internship at the bank the summer before my senior year, and one of the weeks was at their headquarters in Charlotte. Great time meeting interns from all over the country. And then I did my on-the-desk internship in San Francisco. And throughout the whole time during the internship, I just really enjoyed the company's culture. Everybody was very supportive. I had a mentor. Everybody wanted me to succeed. And I also love about how the company has a culture of internal mobility. So if the job you're currently in isn't something that you really like, they are always there to help you find a new job within the bank that's more fitting for you. And you can move across the world because the bank is all over the world. So, yeah. I like to think of this as twofold. I'm going to plug the Runstad department real quick. Runstad, great department, great program. I really love the BSRE program that you're in right now. And I think the Runstad department prepared me very well, both in terms of soft skills and also my technical skills. So a little bit about the technical skill aspect. Since I work in finance, I took an elective class. It was called Real Estate 408 Financial Modeling with Suzanne. And I got to have hands-on experience with Excel, learning about different functions and formulas, building pro formas, building discounted cash flows, and that provided me with a lot of confidence going into the role that I'm in right now that's very technical with Excel. And then also this class, RE 480, I took it, I feel like I'm very old nowadays, but I took it with Shannon many years ago, and very helpful. Actually, I was taking that class when I was recruiting, so it helped me a lot with my resume, my cover letter, with preparing for interviews. So I think this is a very important class to take seriously and to gain a lot from. And then in terms of my soft skills, when I was in school, I was always wondering why we had a group or team project in every single class. And that's just the pattern I saw in the Runstad department, is that there's a team project in every class. But once you start your first job, you realize how important those experiences are. Because every deal or transaction I work on right now, it's pretty much a 20-page deliverable about researching about the company, about their financials. And I'm working with one or two other people which is literally just like how I was in the Runstad department. So learning about dividing up work, utilizing people's strengths, and then also being aware of timelines and deliverable quality was something that I also gained from the Runstad department.
For me, I think it's a lot of the same. I believe we were in that class with Suzanne together.
Yes, yes.
But your classes in Excel in this department are exceptional for giving you kind of the foundation, the foundational understanding of any of the financial modeling that you're going to run into, I think, in the professional world. That's what I've heard from other graduates who are in the workforce already, as well as Hanson and others. So, like, pay attention in those classes, and they really do help you. And I think, if nothing else, it gives you the confidence, because I think a lot of the times what you really need is the confidence to know that you have a piece of the puzzle and you can ask for help, but that you have something and you can work from there. I think also the data modeling and analysis class, I think Vince Wong is teaching that right now. That was really an exceptional class for me because you learn to work in ArcGIS. And I think that was, for me, a good experience because in my internship, I was working with cross-functional teams. So when I was working on a project, I knew that one team was working potentially in ArcGIS, or they were getting their information from one place. And I could think about that project that I had where I was finding a favorable site for, I think, a Topgolf. And I was like, okay, I know like what these layers are and what's raster data. Okay, I can like piece this together in conversations. And I think as well, just being able to talk with other students in class. And I think the array of topics you get in this major is really great as well, because you learn a lot about different pieces of real estate. And so when you're talking with someone who's not working in commercial real estate, I'm in commercial real estate, you're not. I could still have a conversation with Hunter and understand, and I think you can probably have the same for me, but you can just pick up a conversation with different people. And I think that skill is really valuable because you never know who you're going to meet. You never know where your next job's going to come from or who you're going to be working with on a project. So the ability to have the information and understanding, and then the soft skills, kind of like Hanson was talking about, of like starting a conversation, knowing how to piece things together, that's extremely valuable. And I attribute a lot of that to my time in this department.
It's funny too, I do have to say, the class Jill was talking about with ArcGIS too, we were in a group together, which was really fun because she knows a lot of stuff that I learned. And it was great because like she's saying, like especially from a broad range perspective of this major, I think what it allows you to do is network really well. And I think something I always try to do too is get to know your professors really well. That's going to help you a lot in the long run, because you're going to run into scenarios where it's come up for me where I've had questions and I've been able to go back to professors I've had and say, hey, I've run into this scenario, you know, what's this like? And they're happy to give advice and offer help, which has been imperative. Also, something that I think is a great thing you can couple with this major is not only the business minor, but the sales certificate, if you get a chance to, through the Foster School. That helped my networking skills so much, and I think it's really important to know how to be able to talk to an array of different people, like Jill said, but also just to really put yourself in the hot seat. And I think from an exposure standpoint, like it's great what this major does for you. You're exposed to the commercial sector, the appraisal sector, residential, and it really just allows you to get your feet wet because there's so many things you can relate real estate to as a career, and even things you might not even be thinking about you can relate to later. For instance, I have a friend that's in the bioengineering program here, and she's decided to since pivot, and she's going to be working at a law firm, and then she's getting ready to go to law school. And one of the reasons that firm picked her was because she had a different, diverse background in bioengineering. So I think even though you're getting a degree in real estate, you can really go into anything you want. Most every field has some aspect of real estate that it is involved in. So I encourage you guys to get creative with your applications and where you think you may end up.
I want to just like really hone in on what Hunter said about our faculty as well. Your instructors and your professors have experience in real estate, and a lot of them are still working professionals as well. So not only do you have their networks that you can leverage, but also if you have problems later, like Hunter said, you can come back. But if you even just are aware of real estate and you have a question, you see something in the news, our faculty can answer just about anything or have somebody else that you can go talk to. And I think compared to other departments and other programs that I've heard of, that's really special. So take advantage of that.
Essentially, it's really interesting being in residential because I think you have a lot more power in kind of where you end up and where you choose to go. So I was interviewing different brokerages and ultimately decided to go with one that I knew really well. But I don't think the interview process ever really leaves you in your career. I'm constantly bringing my resume to prospective client appointments and even clients we currently work with because it's a very competitive field, and I feel like it's really important to leverage what you have and always come very prepared. So I don't really think the interview process really ever leaves. I do a few a week when I meet with new clients, buyers and sellers, and then also just talking in general to people. They're constantly kind of asking, about me, and especially with this program specifically, a lot of people have questions about the degree in real estate. A lot of people get really excited about it because it's not something you were able to major in 10 years ago here. So it's a really fun, interesting icebreaker too to go into, and that's actually helped me win quite a few interviews and clients as well because people feel very strongly and passionately about UW, and that alumni network goes very far.
Yeah, I think for me, my interview process might be a little bit different since I did get my full-time offer from my internship. So I'll kind of just walk you through my internship and how that turned into a full-time offer. But like I said earlier, attended the career fair for Runstad. I was encouraged to apply to the internship by my then manager, didn't know then. So I applied, sent in a cover letter, which I'm sure you guys have finished the cover letters now.
Yep.
So send in the cover letter, it makes a difference, I think. Kind of makes things personal. Applied, sent in my cover letter, heard back within a week or two. I did kind of like a super day of sorts of interviews. So I had a couple days to pick from to keep open. And then kind of the day before I got given my list of interviews for the day. So I had kind of one in the morning, one in like mid-morning, and then one in the afternoon. And that was just with different members of kind of the team that I was going to be into, and then kind of their peripheral teams as well. And that was just kind of conversations about me, kind of what is my skill set and how do I work with people. It was mostly behavioral. And I got to ask some fun questions. Always ask questions in your interview. Always do some research. Know what interests you, or even like if you saw something in the news, you can ask about that as well. You're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. It's going to be your job. So ended up getting the internship. Kind of, I like to think of my internship as an extended interview for my full-time now as well. So my full-time offer was based off of my performance in the internship, and that was kind of, I had periodic performance reviews, and then I got my offer September of this past year, and then I'm starting in September this year. So it was kind of a longer process, but I think for Microsoft and other kind of larger companies with a real estate arm, they tend to, and I think it might be the same in IB and other areas of banking as well, but recruiting tends to happen in September, November of the year before the interning summer. Yeah. I interviewed in February of the same year, and I think that was unusual. So if you are interested in that, make sure to be on it early. But yeah, it was a great experience.
So my recruiting process was very similar to Jill. I also did an internship. Just going back, I was in school for 3 years. I started recruiting my first year. I applied to, first of all, I talked to a bunch of people working in the banking industry from all different kinds of banks, different roles, and then I narrowed down on which types of internships I wanted to pursue. And then I utilized sources like Handshake, Indeed, and then I applied. And then that was near the end of my first year. And then I got a first round interview at the fall of my second year, and that was through something called HireVue. I'm sure some of you have experienced that before. It's like a face-to-face interview that's virtual, so you're kind of talking to a computer. Not a fan of that, but it does what it does, and I was able to pass that. And then after that, I was invited to, similar to Jill, a super day. My super day was virtual, and then I had 3 interviewers, and one interviewer I remember was entirely technical. It asked me a lot of questions about what I know about the financial services industry, about the different financial statements. And then the other 2 interviews were more behavioral, wanting to understand who I am as a person, and then what kind of skill sets I have, and how I work on teams just like Jill. And after the super day, I received an offer for the internship the following summer. This was fall still, and then I interned the following summer. Went into my internship a little bit prior, but just like Jill, my internship, like she said, it's a 10-week interview as well. I remember I was very nervous. I wanted to make sure I was on my best behavior during those 10 weeks, and I had periodic performance reviews as well. And I think the most important thing in an internship is not feeling like you have to know everything, but showing that you want to be there and that you're passionate about the work and that you want to learn as much as possible. I think Jill and Hunter can also
ask questions.
Attest to that. Yes, I think during my internship, I asked so many questions. I'm the type of person who doesn't hesitate to ask questions. I know some people might think that it's annoying or they're bothering someone, but asking questions also shows curiosity, and it shows that you want to be there. And so, I asked a lot of questions. I did well in the internship, and then I received a full-time offer, and then I started last summer.
This is a tough one because I feel like during college, I just constantly overstimulated with the job, with school, with networking, with clubs at UW. I also commuted, so there was just so much going on all the time that I didn't have as much energy to devote to real estate as I do now. So I think from a time management perspective, I would say probably the hardest transition was just setting my own schedule every week, because I was so used to the structure of UW with the classes and after school activities. So essentially every week does look really different, but I've been able to devote a lot more time to real estate, especially within the company. Previously I was a member of our Young Professionals Network at John L. Scott, and now that I've had time to really be there, I've stepped into a leadership role as Washington Chair for our company. So that involves like coordinating events, connecting younger brokers across offices, because we have offices spread out across the whole state and in Oregon. Don't miss those bells. And then I think it's honestly given me time to focus a lot on how I want to present myself as an entrepreneur. So I've focused a lot on personal rebranding. I've had a lot more time to pick up more clients and just spend more time in the field, since I don't have to be in Seattle 4 or 5 days a week. So that's ultimately helped a lot. And I would say I graduated in autumn quarter, so I haven't been out that long. But I've had so much more time to just devote to my own career, which has been really nice, and network within my field versus previously it was more at UW, which I'm really glad I did. But I made sure when I was a student, and I think it's really important to do this too, is take advantage of every opportunity you can at UW, because once you're out, you really don't go back as much. And I think it's really important to get to know everyone while you're in classes too, and really show up in group projects. I remember the people that didn't kind of kept those habits, and the ones that did, I think, are doing really well. And I think that attests to the habits you pick up at UW. If you carry those on with you into the real world, that really does pay off.
I agree. The group projects, they might seem challenging now in the classes. I know working with different people can be a testament to your communication skills and patience, but really take it seriously and take it as like a practice playground for the real world. For me, I'll talk about my transition to the internship. I think one of the biggest things was I love a rule book. I love a rubric. I read the instructions, then I'll read them again. So going into my internship, I kind of got given a loose challenge the team had, and they gave me a lot of liberty to take in that situation and then ask a lot of questions and come up with a solution as I saw fit. And so that was something that I wasn't used to. So it was really fun to be able to take in all that information. I think I took like 2 weeks and just had a meeting with as many people who touched my area of my intern project, and taking in that information and learning how to kind of consolidate things and kind of put together the invisible story was really fun. But that's different from school. It's not like you have an assignment and you know what you need to do to get a good grade and you do it. You can do it the night before. You can do it 2 weeks in advance. That's kind of up to you. I really had to be, as a somewhat of a procrastinator, I really had to be on top of myself and like, okay, I need to have X done in 4 weeks, in 3 weeks. I need to like kind of look at my timeline backwards, and I guess for you guys backwards would be this way, and kind of put up stage gates for myself, and I could communicate that with my manager and the rest of the people on my team to get the help I needed. But you know, I'm working to solve a problem with other people, and how do I set up my time to also work within their schedules? And I think that was a big learning lesson for me, as well as like, you do have classes and things in undergrad, and there's always a lot of schedules happening. It's very busy, kind of like Hunter said. But when you're working in the real world, you have your own Outlook calendar, and there's meetings that pop up. And sometimes you set a block for yourself to really have a good work time, and then you get added to a meeting. So then you just kind of have to really be able to set your boundaries and work within your time and be diligent about that, but also be flexible enough to say, okay, well, I had a meeting, maybe I need to stay a little later, and I can like come in a little, like, you know, shuffle your schedule around. But that's a lesson.
Yeah, I completely agree with both Hunter and Jill. Something that I also noticed, adding on to Jill, is that once you're in the real world, the deadlines are not actually deadlines. And I'm not saying that you should turn in things late, but if they say a deadline, let's say is June 1st, that means your deadline, in my situation, from my experience, is more like May 15th.
The review.
Exactly.
And then like refinishing.
So that doesn't mean that things are due on the day they're due. For you, it's due much earlier, because your work's gonna get checked, and then it's gonna come back to you, and it's gonna get checked again, and it's gonna go through a whole chain before it gets to the final person that has an actual say on whether or not things get approved or not. And then going into a little bit about my experience post-grad, I think the most challenging thing for me is just having less opportunities, being able to have social interactions and hang out with your friends and meet new people. Of course, if you work at a company, a large company especially, you have opportunities to network with people. But at the end of the day, that's still a professional environment, so you can't get too personal with these people. And I really miss having classes and having clubs in school where I could really build these connections with people and have genuine relationships. And, you know, post-grad, I feel that it's just not the same in terms of having these different set places for you where you can make friends. And also, once you graduate, a lot of people that you knew in school are going to go on different paths. They're going to work at different companies. They're going to move across the country, across the world. And so you lose touch with them as well, and you have to be intentional with your relationships before. And then post-grad, because you're so busy with work, there's also less time for you to catch up with people and also go to networking events to make new friends. And from my experience, a lot of my coworkers have families, so it's also harder for me to connect with them. So yeah, what I'm trying to say is when you're in school, make as many friends as you can and go to as many events as you can so that you have a pre-built foundation, a network of people that you can connect with post-grad.
So a big one for me this year getting out of school was I really wanted to become a managing broker, and essentially that's a test you take, a state and national test to upgrade your real estate brokerage license so that you have the capacity to manage other real estate brokers. And this year has been a lot about just, I would say, acclimating to what it's like to be a broker full-time and an independent contractor, and ultimately I'm learning everything I can right now so that anything I delegate in the future I know how to do myself. But I think it's really important to have at least short-term goals for yourself. I think it is important to have long-term, but especially coming out of UW, I think being kind to yourself is really important. And yes, holding yourself accountable, but realize that you don't have to land your dream job right outside of college. I think a lot of people think they have to go into something that's very linear and very related to what you end up majoring in, but I really don't think that's the case. And like I mentioned earlier, I've had friends that have pivoted to completely different career paths, and now is really the perfect time to do that, especially coming out of college. You're going to learn so much and soak up so much at this point in your life, where I think you can potentially wait and end up hurting yourself. And I think the biggest thing too is make sure you find something you're passionate about. I think that will also help you a lot, because if you show up every day and you really don't like what you're doing, that makes everything you're doing more taxing and more draining. And you want to have a life outside of work too. It's not just about work. So making that balance for yourself, I think, is really imperative. And then just figuring out what you like. I feel like a lot of you guys have probably had either internship or job experience or taken a class that's really resonated with you. So just being interested and being curious, like people have mentioned before. No one ever faults you for asking questions. I think it really helps you down the line, and you can end up finding what you're passionate about. So yeah, those are some tips I have.
Awesome.
Next steps for me, soak up everything I can like a sponge. I know I'm going to want to pursue some form of higher education, but I'm choosing to work for a good set of years before going to either an MBA or a law program. So I like corporate real estate. I find it really interesting, and I'm very interested in the job I'm going into. And I know I can learn a lot there. So I think my short-term goal is just to ask a lot of questions, continue to be curious, and learn as much as I can, and build relationships. Because that's what it's all about. You're working a job, but it's also who you're working with. Do you like what you're doing? Because quite frankly, if you don't like what you're doing a disservice to yourself and your team, because somebody else could be more passionate and do it better because they care more. So I think that's important. That's a tip. Follow your interests. That's led me to where I am. So I really think that's how I choose to live my life, following my interests and curiosities. And I think another tip I have, my last thing, would just be, as a college student, do informational interviews and leverage the networks of your friends, their parents, your parents if they have any connections for you. My family's not in real estate, and I'm not from Washington either, so that couldn't kind of go that way. But if you know someone who knows somebody who's in real estate, ask to talk to them. People love to talk about their jobs. It's exciting. And if you're a college student, it's exciting for them. I know it might seem like you're bothering them, but it's exciting for them that they have somebody who's interested in what they do. And then always, 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 if the conversation went well, connect with them on LinkedIn and ask them to potentially connect you with maybe 1, 2, 3 people who they think might be of interest to you. That's kind of based on how your conversation goes, but that way you kind of have a networking stream that's coming to you in a sense, and that way you maybe have a conversation once a week, twice a week, every 2 weeks, but you're always kind of learning new things and adding to your network.
Love it. Yeah, I couldn't agree less with everything that Hunter and Joe said. In terms of my situation, I guess, well, my short-term goal and my long-term goal kind of relate, but my short-term goal is to just, learn as much as I can, soak in as much as I can, because yeah, in school you get to soak in a lot of information and learn a lot of information, but once you step out into the real world and you land your first job, you're also new and you know a lot less than people who have been in the industry or have been in the role for many years. So I want to learn as much as I can and get very good at what I'm doing, so that I have as much knowledge as I can, which leads to my long-term goal. My long-term goal, actually a plot twist, is not to stay in finance. My long-term goal is to actually be a teacher, and specifically in higher education. I want to actually be a professor. And so I've actually been trying to give as many guest talks as I can in various real estate classes. I don't know if any of you have seen me, and I just really enjoy teaching. When I was in high school and when I was in college, I tried to have as many opportunities as I could to teach. So I taught elementary schoolers and middle schoolers when I was in high school, and then in school I was a teaching assistant for both the Runstad department and also the Foster School of Business. I actually was Nikita's TA in her RE 480 class. That was a lot of fun. So I got to know about all the different assignments you guys are working on. And I just love being in the classroom. And right now, in my current role, I'm just trying to learn as much as I can so that I can deliver as much as I can about what I know about the real world to my students one day. And so something that I want to say before you graduate is, I think it's really important that before you graduate, you have the right mindset. I think something that Hunter and Jill touched on about being passionate about what you do is really important. You do not need to have your life figured out in school or right when you graduate. And this is actually a mistake I made. I felt like I had my entire life figured out when I graduated from school. And I chose a career path that's very linear. You get promoted every couple of years as long as you perform well. But working in the role, I really do enjoy my current role. But I also, from experience, realized that I'm passionate about what I do, but my long-term passion is actually teaching. So if you don't have a job or you don't know what you want to do straight out of graduating, and also you don't need to worry. I know it's sometimes a little intimidating when you see that people are around you or having different roles or going to graduate school and then you feel behind. But at the end of the day, everybody has their own path in life, and we're all going to get to the same place. And that place is hopefully living the life that we want to live. And so don't worry, okay? Because if you don't have your life figured out right when you graduate, that's okay, because you have more time to explore different things and go on different routes and figure out what you actually want to do. Because something that I read from a book, I forgot the book name, but the book said that the most successful people had a variety of experiences when they were young. Mm-hmm. So you don't need to have your entire life figured out. Again, I'm emphasizing a lot, but just absorb as much as you can and try to do as much things as you can when you're in school and right when you graduate. So that's my piece of advice.
I have one. So I would ask two. I really liked, depending on the conversation, I asked what the challenge that team had, and I would kind of get the vibe, if you will, but just ask, it sounds like you're working on this and this is going really well, but what's a challenge that you have in your role right now that, like, either I could help you with, or like that is weighing on your mind. Just because it shows that you're curious, it shows that you are helpful and you are intentional, but also it gives you an idea as the interviewee of what is actually, like, you know what their kind of role and title is, you know what that company does, but what is actually like their problem of the day? What are they working on? And so I think it's good because it looks okay on you, but also it gives you a lot of insight. And then also always look at the company before you interview. If you haven't looked at least one person's LinkedIn for that company, if you know the interviewer, look at their LinkedIn. But if you should have a question about the company, just find something interesting, or maybe like I think for my interview with Microsoft, I had a question about like something I saw in the news that I didn't quite understand. So I was like, I saw this and here's something I know. Can you explain more about this? I think it's really interesting. And it shows that you pay attention, you can critically think, so you can take whatever you saw in the news and you can apply it. And I think that is simple, but is missed by a lot of people.
Completely agree with everything that Jill said. Just to add on, I love the point about being aware about current events, because if you look at the news, some people might not look at the news every day, but definitely look at the news before you go into an interview. And if you can craft a question out of that relates to the role in the company, I think that's golden. So in my case, because I work at a bank, obviously there's a lot of loans going on, and interest rates determine the price of these loans. And right now we're in an economy where interest rates are really high. And their interest rates were also high several years ago when I was interviewing. I asked the interviewer, given the current interest rate environment, we have higher priced debt, how has that affected the bank's different lending strategies? So I think that's in my opinion, I thought that was a good question, and also the interviewer told me that was a good question. But sometimes they say, oh, good question, but I felt like that was an actual good question. Because I knew about the current events, but I also related it to whatever the role was, because I'm working in credit, I'm providing loans to companies. And then another question that I ask that I think a lot of people might not ask is, I like to ask at the very end of the interview, are there any weaknesses on my application, or is there anything else that you would like me to clarify?
That's a good one.
Because first of all, I feel like this shows that you really want the role, and second of all, it gives you insight into what the interviewer's thinking, so that you can clarify something before you end the call or you end the interview. So I know it's a hard question, but I encourage you to try it.
Well, those are great questions. I think from a sales perspective, I always really like asking the question, like, what's most important to you, or how can I best be of service in the role that you're looking for? Because everyone works very differently. Everyone has a different communication style or working style. And that question has helped me and saved like countless hours on like trying to figure out like, well, how do they want me to show up? How do they want me to work? Some people... And everyone really appreciates that question too. No one has been like, oh, why would you ask that? So I think that's a great question to ask. And then from a role standpoint, like within a company, I think it's great to ask about company culture, and then also really doing your research, like Jill had said, on companies before on LinkedIn, and then finding out like if you have any common connections, or maybe they went to UW. That goes a long way too in being a great icebreaker, but then also ending the interview with, they're going to remember that they were comfortable with you, or they had that common connection, and that'll separate you from a lot of the other candidates as well.
Okay. I was in an interview one time, and I had looked at their LinkedIn, and I saw that they had been in some form of military service, and on my resume, I like to have a few things on my resume that are not related to my academics and any of like kind of my other interests professionally. So when I was in high school, and now I do it as kind of a volunteer thing, I worked was involved with a Mariner Scout organization. So it's like a youth maritime thing. So maintain boats and are out on the water in the San Francisco Bay Area, but that's on my resume. And because I knew that might be of interest, it actually came up in conversation. And so you can tailor things too around what your experiences and their experiences might be. So we ended up having a 10-minute conversation about his time in the Navy. It ended up being, and we talked about how that influenced leadership and the experiences you gain and working with people. So you never know, but just even if it's not related to your position or anything professionally specific, you never know what details might come up. So look out for that too.
Yeah, to add on to Jill's point, I think something that a lot of people overlook is you want to treat an interview like a conversation.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Some people might think of interviews as a back and forth thing, a question answer. But I feel like, to me, the strongest interviews are the interviews that felt like a conversation, and that you could get personal and you can actually get to know the interviewer and the interviewer can get to know you. So treat it as you're talking to a family member or a friend. And you'll find that it's a lot more comfortable for you, and that the result might end up a lot better as well.
People like who they work with. So if you can show your intelligence, show you care, be interested, but also carry a conversation, that's a winner right there.
Yeah. If you're going into a very technical field, such as finance, you'll probably have an interview that asks you questions like that. And from my experience, I actually did have a question I didn't know the answer to in my interview process for my internship. So they asked me, for example, what do you know about financial covenants? And I had no idea what a covenant was, or what a financial covenant was. And so I just honestly told them, to be honest, I haven't gotten to this part of my studies yet, but I would love to learn about it, and if you could tell me a little bit more, or I can learn about it after this call and then follow up with you on this question. Because you're human, and the interviewer understands that. If they don't understand that, then that's not an employer you want to work for. So you want to be honest. You don't want to fake it until you make it, because they can read through that. And if you don't know the answer, just be honest, and then you can go with that approach. But there's another approach you could do, is if you don't know the answer to that question, you could say, hey, I don't know the exact answer to your question, but what I do know about this, and then go over what you do know, and then go from there.
Don't be afraid to take a pause.
Yeah.
I in one of my interviews for my now job, I got asked an interesting question, and I told the interviewer, I was like, can I take a second to think about this? And I think I even halfway through the interview was like, I know I'm taking a while to respond to certain things, but I really want to be intentional with my response. And later was told, I really actually appreciated that you didn't just start rattling off information and took a second to compose yourself. Remember, not deer in the headlights. They asked me a question. I don't remember what I prepared for this question. Just take a breath. And that's totally okay. But it is kind of awkward, I think, sometimes when you're just sitting there on a Zoom screen if you're virtual. But yeah, don't be afraid to say you don't know, because kind of what Hanson said, people can tell, and you don't want to dig yourself into a hole that you can't get out of.
Yeah. Exactly. And you don't need to feel like you need to know everything going into interview. I didn't know the answer to multiple questions in a technical interview, and I still got the job offer.
That's why you're there, to learn.
Exactly.
Everyone knows you're not an expert, you're a student, or in your first few years as a professional. So.
They don't look for the correct answer, they look at your approach to the answer.
Probably my biggest piece of advice is to either find a mentor or a team that has your back in times that you do get overwhelmed, because that's going to be inevitable with school. There were definitely quarters I felt more stressed than others, but I felt like it was worth the reward because I wanted to come out of school with more experience. And like Eli was saying, like, I think it's a really smart move because if you decide you like it, you already have like a year under your belt, versus if you're just coming fresh out, some of those losses can feel a little bit tougher than versus when you have school to fall back on. And really keep you grounded in some of that scheduling. So while I do think parts of it are overwhelming, I think it's worth it, especially if you're type A and you like going after it. Like, I think people are going to be impressed too that you're doing it while you're in school, and I just wanted to make sure like I was taking advantage of every opportunity I could, because there aren't like a ton of young brokers, especially in residential, like doing this program. So I think it's a great differentiator and will definitely help you in the long run. So I say go for it, and then if you don't like it, you can, pivot to something else. But like I said, I think having the team is invaluable, because there were times I couldn't meet a client because I had class or a final, and my team had my back and was able to go meet the client. So just feel supported and go after it. Yeah, I can definitely start with the first part of that question. I think the team experience was really imperative because, like some of the other panelists had mentioned, you're always going to be working on a team even if you don't think you are. Even like every transaction I have, I kind of approach it like it's a different team, it's a different person I'm working with. And I think from a behavioral standpoint, it really teaches you like how to get along with all different types of people, because everyone has a different working style. And sometimes like I'm in a scenario where I'm very proactive and someone might not be. So it's the kind of those gentle nudges of where we can meet in the middle, and I kindly say like, hey, I usually work this way, and how can we work together to best get you to the final place and product. And so I think it's really important to be able to really ask someone else how they work too, so they can feel understood. Because I feel like when people don't feel understood, that's when you can really run into issues on the team too, where people can put up walls where they don't want to work with you. So I think especially like at the beginning, usually of like the team I was on with Jill, we would ask at the beginning, like before we even got together, we were like, how do you like to work? How can we best identify our strengths, versus like maybe I've got some weaknesses here that Jill can cover, and I've got some strengths here that Jill needs, which we did. So again, going back to like the interview process, like I think you're interviewing teams like who you want to work with just as much as people that want to work with you. But I don't think any industry is completely solo, so you're always going to have something where you're working with someone, even if it's not a large team or a group project like you may think now. Like there's always going to be someone new that you're interacting with down the line that's going to be different from you. So yeah, just learning how to work in teams through this program helped a lot as well.
I think to get at kind of, it sounds like you're asking, how do you leverage that experience in an interview? So I think where that fits in is a lot of times, especially in behavioral questions, you get asked things like, tell me about a time like where you encountered a struggle, or tell me about a time where you had a conflict in a group and you solved that problem. Things along that line. That's trying to tease out, how do you approach problems? How do you approach people under stress? So those are kind of your questions. And at least how I did it was I had specific projects in mind. I always prepared kind of for the main behavioral questions. I prepared answers for ahead of time.
Yep.
And so for each kind of question, and there's tons of these, Eli can give you a list, I'm sure, I would have at least 3 either projects or scenarios that I could call upon, because I think the thing that you have to remember too in an interview is if they ask you a behavioral question and you don't answer it in a way that fulfills whatever they're asking it for, they will ask you it again in a different way. So they'll ask a different question, but it's getting at the same thing. So whatever scenario you had prepared for the original question, you can't repeat something. So you need to have multiple examples. So these group projects filled a lot of my examples. So for example, I was asked, a time that I hit a roadblock in a project and how I worked with a team to solve it. And so I talked about, I believe it was a class with Jeff McCann. I think we were doing something, analyzing like a site feasibility. And so I talked about, we hit this roadblock in the project And so like I called together the team and we talked about, you know, XYZ, and we came up like with this creative solution. And you know, you can give the details, frame the project so it's understood that, you know, you're a student and it is a project, but it is practical experience, because if that happens in the real world, you're working with your team and you have to come up with a creative solution. So you can say it's a project in the interview, but it still shows your skills as kind of your soft skills as a communicator, and that's how you phrase it. It's, you know, I really use my communication skills here, and this is what communication means to me. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and that goes back to STAR, situation,
Yep.
task, action, result. So coming to every interview prepared with at least 4 or 5 STAR stories, that's what I suggest. And that will really serve you well. And which, maybe even have 7 or 8 STAR stories just in your back pocket, but then think about for each interview, which couple are you going to use for that one interview,
Yeah.
depending on what it is and what they might ask you.
And answering your questions
Yeah.
in an interview, you're storytelling. It is a conversation, but you're storytelling. So if you've prepared ahead of time what you're gonna, like what kind of your stories are, you can phrase it as like, all right, here's my thesis statement of my story. Here's what the details I'm telling you. Here's what I learned from it that you're supposed to learn from it about me. And then you can wrap it up with a bow. So that way when you're in an interview, you can answer things concisely, and still make sure you know you covered everything you want to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Perfect.
again completely agree with everything that Hunter and Joe have said. Very smart, wise people. And to add on to that, I don't have a lot to add because they've already covered a lot. But I think your interviewer is definitely going to have your resume right in front of them when they interview you. So really look through your resume before you go into an interview and look at the experiences you listed, and think about those experiences, what you encountered in those experiences, some of the challenges you faced, and then, you know, what stories you can tell from those experiences. And then to add on my perspective about teamwork, I think the most important thing that what I have experienced is what employers want to see is that you are able to work with all kinds of people, like Hunter and Jill touched on. They want to see that you can provide your background experiences, but also can appreciate and leverage other people's background experiences. And then in school, when you're working on team projects, I know from experience, a lot of you are probably dividing and conquering. Someone works on the performa, somebody works on the feasibility analysis, which is a great approach, and that's what we do in the real world as well. But when you do the things that you are comfortable with, you don't learn as much. So it's super important to step outside of your comfort zone. And for those of you who, for example, if you're not really comfortable with financial analysis and you don't want to do a performa, that doesn't mean you have to go do the performa for the project. But I think it's really important for group mates to come together and then talk about what they worked on, so that you can learn about what they did, and then you can also share what you did, so that you can leverage each other's strengths but also learn from each other, instead of just doing the things that you're comfortable with and then calling it good. Because at the end of the day, each project is a learning opportunity.